I stood in my driveway at 5 in the morning, staring at the certified letter from the Pine Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, and I could feel my blood pressure rising with every word I read about how my snow-clearing business was now considered an unapproved commercial enterprise that violated neighborhood covenants. My name is Simon Ashford, and I had been running a small snow removal business out of my home in Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado, for 3 winters without a single complaint. I lived in this planned community just outside Denver, where the houses all looked tastefully similar, and the lawns were required to be maintained to precise specifications. The neighborhood sat at the base of the Rocky Mountains, which meant we got our fair share of snow every winter. That is exactly why I started my business in the first place. The letter was signed by Patricia Hendricks, the HOA president, and it demanded I cease all business operations immediately or face daily fines of $500 per day. I read that part 3 times to make sure I was not seeing things. The letter cited Section 14 of the Community Covenants, which apparently prohibited running businesses from residential properties. The thing was, I had checked those covenants before starting my business. The section they referenced talked about businesses that created excessive noise, traffic, or visual blight. My operation consisted of me, my truck, and my plow. I kept my equipment in my garage. I left early in the morning and came back in the evening. No customers came to my house. No employees. No signs. Nothing. I went inside and woke up my wife, Zara Wilson. We had gotten married 2 years ago, and she had kept her last name for professional reasons. She worked as a nurse at Denver General Hospital, pulling long shifts that often left her exhausted. I hated waking her up on her day off, but this could not wait. "What is it?" she mumbled, her dark hair spread across the pillow. "The HOA is trying to shut down my business," I said, handing her the letter. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and read through it. Her expression shifted from confusion to anger as she processed the words. "This is insane. You have been doing this for years. Your business does not bother anyone." "That is what I thought," I said, "but apparently Patricia Hendricks has decided otherwise." Zara knew all about Patricia. Everyone in Pine Ridge Estates knew about Patricia. She was 53 years old, had perfectly maintained blonde highlights, drove a white Escalade, and treated the HOA presidency like she was running a small dictatorship. She had moved into the neighborhood 4 years ago and immediately got herself elected to the board. Within a year, she had maneuvered herself into the president position. Since then, she had been on a crusade to enforce every tiny rule in the covenant with an iron fist. "You need to fight this," Zara said, handing the letter back to me. "Your business is legitimate. You have a license, insurance, everything." She was right. I had done everything by the book. I had registered my business with the state, obtained proper licensing, and carried commercial insurance. I paid my taxes. I followed every law. The only thing I had not done was ask permission from the HOA, because nothing in the covenant said I needed to. That morning, after Zara went back to sleep, I sat at my kitchen table and drafted a response. I explained that my business did not violate any covenant provisions, that it created no disturbance to neighbors, and that the section they cited did not apply to my situation. I kept it professional and factual. I printed it out, put it in an envelope, and dropped it off at Patricia's house before heading out to plow a client's driveway. The December snow had been consistent that year, which was good for business. I had about 30 regular clients, most of them elderly folks or busy professionals who did not have the time or ability to clear their own driveways and walkways. I charged reasonable rates and did good work. My customers appreciated me. I got referrals regularly. 3 days after I delivered my response, I received another letter. This one informed me that the HOA board had reviewed my objection and denied it. The fines would begin in 7 days if I did not cease operations. They also added that any appeal would require a formal hearing, which would not be scheduled until after the new year. Convenient timing, since that meant I would rack up thousands in fines during the busiest season. I called an attorney that afternoon. His name was Marcus Chen, and he specialized in HOA disputes. His office was in downtown Denver, and he agreed to see me the next day. Marcus was in his early 40s, sharp-eyed and efficient. He listened to my situation, reviewed the letters and the covenant documents, and leaned back in his chair. "They do not have a case," he said. "The covenant section they are citing specifically refers to businesses that create disturbances. Your business operates entirely off-site except for storage of equipment in your garage, which is not visible from the street. You are not generating traffic to your residence. This is clear overreach." "So what do I do?" I asked. "We fight it. I will draft a formal legal response explaining why their interpretation is incorrect. If they proceed with fines, we will seek an injunction in court. The problem is timing. Court proceedings take weeks, sometimes months. And in the meantime, they fine me $500 a day. Potentially, though I doubt they will actually enforce it. Often these boards back down once they realize you are serious about fighting. They do not want legal fees either." I left his office feeling slightly better but still stressed. The attorney fees alone would cost me thousands. If this dragged on, it could destroy my business even if I won over the next few days. I tried to keep working while Marcus handled the legal response. But then something else happened. I started getting cancellations. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived 3 streets over, called to say she would not need my services anymore. Then Mr. Thompson. Then the Johnsons. All of them lived outside Pine Ridge Estates, but they gave vague excuses about costs or deciding to handle it themselves. I got suspicious after the 4th cancellation. I called Mrs. Rodriguez back and pressed her for the real reason. "I am sorry, Simon," she said, and she genuinely sounded apologetic. "A woman from your HOA called me, Patricia something. She said your business was operating illegally and that I could be liable if something happened. She said you were violating neighborhood rules and suggested I find someone else. I cannot afford legal trouble." My hands clenched around the phone. "Mrs. Rodriguez, my business is completely legal. I have all my licenses and insurance. That woman is lying to you. I believe you, dear, but I just cannot take the risk. I hope you understand." After that call, I checked with the other clients who had canceled. Same story. Patricia had called each of them, spreading lies about my business being illegal or operating without proper credentials. "She is interfering with your business," Marcus said when I told him. "That is tortious interference. We can potentially sue for damages." "I just want to run my business," I said, frustrated. "I do not understand why she is doing this." But as it turned out, I would find out soon enough. 2 weeks before Christmas, I ran into Patricia at the grocery store. I was picking up coffee when I saw her in the next aisle, inspecting avocados with the kind of intensity most people reserve for buying cars. I thought about walking away, but I was tired of this whole situation. I approached her. "Patricia, can we talk?" She looked up, and her expression immediately hardened. She was wearing expensive workout clothes despite it being nearly freezing outside, and her nails were perfectly manicured. "I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Ashford. Why are you doing this? My business does not hurt anyone. It does not affect the neighborhood. You are running a commercial operation in a residential zone. It is inappropriate and against our covenants. No, It is not. The covenant does not prohibit what I am doing. She picked up an avocado, squeezed it, and put it back. The board has made its decision. If you do not like it, you can move. You called my clients. You lied to them about my business being illegal. Now she looked directly at me, and there was something cold in her eyes. I informed concerned citizens about covenant violations. That is my duty as HOA president. Lying to people is not your duty. It is illegal. Are you threatening me? Her voice rose slightly, and a few other shoppers glanced our way. I am telling you that you are interfering with my livelihood for no legitimate reason. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You want to know the real reason? Because people like you think the rules do not apply to them. You think you can just do whatever you want without asking permission. This neighborhood has standards. I am not going to let some handyman with a plow truck turn it into a commercial district. I clear snow, that is it. I am not running a warehouse or a factory. You are advertising your business on that truck. It sits in your driveway. It looks unprofessional. My truck is in my garage most of the time. Not always. I have photographs. Of course she did. I could picture her driving around the neighborhood with her phone, documenting every tiny violation she could find. This is personal for you, I said. This has nothing to do with covenants or rules. It has everything to do with rules, and if you do not comply, you will be fined into compliance. Good day, Mr. Ashford. She walked away, her shopping cart wheels squeaking on the polished floor. I stood there feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. The interaction confirmed what I had suspected. Patricia was not enforcing legitimate rules. She was on a power trip, and I had become her target. The fine started on December 18th. I received a notice that I owed $500 for the first day of non-compliance. The next day, another $500. Marcus filed an emergency motion for an injunction, but the courts were backed up with holiday schedules. We got a hearing date for January 7th. That meant I would potentially accumulate over $10,000 in fines before we even got in front of a judge. I stopped taking new clients but kept servicing my remaining ones. I had to make a living. Zara and I had a mortgage. We had bills. My snow-clearing business was not making me rich, but it provided good supplemental income during the winter months. I worked construction in the warmer seasons, but winter was slower for that work. The stress was affecting everything. I was not sleeping well. Zara tried to be supportive, but I could see the worry in her eyes. We had some savings, but not enough to cover massive HOA fines and attorney fees indefinitely. On December 22nd, something interesting happened. I got a knock on my door around 8 in the evening. When I opened it, I found Jerry Patterson, one of my neighbors from 3 houses down. Jerry was in his late 60s, retired from teaching, and had always been friendly. "Simon, you got a minute?" he asked. "Sure, come in." We sat in my living room and Jerry looked uncomfortable. "I heard about what Patricia is doing to you, the fines and everything. News travels fast. It is a small neighborhood. Look, I want you to know that not everyone agrees with her. There are people on the board and in the community who think this is ridiculous." "Really?" "Yeah." I talked to David Morrison and Linda Chen. They are both board members. They did not vote for this action. Patricia railroaded it through using some procedural trick. She called an emergency board meeting when she knew David would be out of town and Linda had a doctor's appointment. Only she and Tom Bradley showed up. They voted 2-0 to enforce the fines. Tom Bradley was Patricia's lapdog, a 40-something middle manager who seemed to think agreeing with Patricia on everything would earn him status in the neighborhood. "Can they do that?" I asked. Technically, they followed the bylaws. 3 board members can constitute a quorum if proper notice is given, but it was shady as hell. David and Linda are furious. This was the first good news I had heard in weeks. What can they do about it? We are working on it. There might be a way to call a special meeting and vote to rescind the fines. But it takes time. I just wanted you to know you have support. Do not let Patricia intimidate you. After Jerry left, I felt slightly more hopeful, but the clock was still ticking on those fines. Christmas came and went. It was subdued. Zara and I tried to enjoy the holiday, but the HOA situation hung over everything. We exchanged gifts, had a nice dinner, and tried not to think about the mounting fines and legal bills. On December 28th, the weather forecast changed everything. The National Weather Service issued a blizzard warning for the Denver metro area. A major winter storm was tracking in from the northwest, expected to bring 1 to 2 feet of snow along with high winds and dangerous wind chills. The storm would hit late on the 30th and continue through New Year's Eve. Biggest storm in 5 years, the meteorologist said on the news. Residents should prepare for whiteout conditions and major travel disruptions. My phone started ringing immediately. Clients who had stuck with me wanted to know if I would be available. Elderly customers were worried about being snowed in. I told everyone I would do my best, but I was honestly not sure what to do. Technically, working during the storm would rack up more HOA fines. You have to work, Zara said when I voiced my concerns. People are depending on you. The HOA can go to hell. She was right. I had clients who needed help, and I was not going to abandon them because Patricia Hendricks had a vendetta. I spent the 29th preparing. I checked my plow, made sure my truck was serviced, stocked up on salt and sand, and charged all my batteries. The storm was supposed to be a monster. It started snowing around 10 p.m. on the 30th. At first, it was light, but by midnight, it was coming down hard. I watched the weather radar on my phone, seeing the massive band of snow rotating across Colorado. By 2 a.m., there were already 6 inches on the ground. I tried to sleep but could not. Around 4:30, I gave up and got dressed. Zara was working a double shift at the hospital and would not be home until the following evening. I left her a note, grabbed my gear, and headed to the garage. The wind was howling when I backed my truck out. Snow was falling so thick I could barely see across the street. My plow cut through the accumulation in my driveway, pushing it to the side. I had about 15 clients on my priority list, mostly elderly or disabled folks who absolutely needed their driveways and walkways cleared. I started with Mrs. Chen, an 82-year-old widow who lived alone about 2 miles from my house. The roads were already treacherous. The city plows had not made it through yet. My truck handled it well, but I saw several cars stuck or abandoned along the way. Mrs. Chen's driveway had almost 10 inches of heavy, wet snow. I cleared it carefully, then did her walkway and the area around her front door. She came to the window and waved, smiling with relief. I waved back and moved on to the next client. For the next 8 hours, I worked non-stop. The snow kept falling. The wind pushed it into drifts that made everything harder. My hands were freezing despite my gloves. My back ached from the constant jolting of the truck. But I kept going. Around 2 in the afternoon, I was clearing Mr. Thompson's driveway when my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. "Hello, Mr. Ashford. This is Doris Kemper. I got your number from Mrs. Rodriguez. I know you two have worked together before." "Yes, what can I do for you?" "I am 87 years old and I live alone on Maple Street. My regular snow person has not shown up and I am completely snowed in. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow that I cannot miss. Can you help me?" I was exhausted and running behind schedule, but I could not say no. "Give me your address. I will get there as soon as I can." It took me another 3 hours to work through my list and get to Mrs. Kemper's house. By then, there was close to 18 inches of snow on the ground, and it was still falling. Her driveway was completely buried. It took me 40 minutes to clear it properly. When I finished, she came out bundled in a heavy coat and pressed cash into my hand despite my protests. "You are a lifesaver," she said, her voice shaky with emotion. "I was so worried." "No problem, madam. Stay safe." By the time I got home that evening, I had been working for nearly 16 hours straight. I was soaked, freezing, and exhausted, but I had helped nearly 20 people dig out from the storm. The snow had finally stopped around 6 p.m., leaving close to 22 inches of accumulation across the metro area. I pulled into my garage, shut off the truck, and sat there for a moment, too tired to move. Then I saw the paper tucked under my windshield wiper. I got out and grabbed it. It was a notice from the HOA. Patricia must have put it there at some point during the day. The notice informed me that I had been observed operating my business during the prohibited period and that additional fines had been levied. Another $500. I crumpled the paper and threw it across the garage. The next morning, January 1st, I woke up to dozens of messages. Voicemails, texts, emails, all from people who needed help with snow removal. The storm had overwhelmed the city's ability to respond. Many commercial snow removal companies were days behind. People were desperate, but I also had a message from Marcus, my attorney. "Call me when you get this. We need to talk about the fines." I called him back around 9 a.m. "What is going on?" "The HOA sent me an accounting of your fines. You are up to $7,000. Simon, they are serious about collecting. If you do not pay, they can put a lien on your house." A lien on my house, for running a legitimate business. The injustice of it made me want to scream. "Our hearing is in 6 days, Marcus continued. "I am confident we will win, but you need to be prepared for the possibility that the judge might not grant immediate relief. This could drag on." After that call, I sat at my kitchen table and tried to figure out what to do. I could stop working and avoid more fines, but that meant abandoning people who needed help and losing income. Or I could keep working and risk losing my house. Zara came home around noon, exhausted from her shift. The hospital had been overwhelmed with people injured during the storm. Slip and falls, car accidents, heart attacks from shoveling snow. She collapsed on the couch and I filled her in on the situation. "This is insane," she said. "There has to be something we can do. Marcus is handling the legal side, but it takes time. What about going public?" News stations love this kind of story. HOA bullying small business owner during a crisis. I had not thought about that. Zara had a point. The media loved HOA horror stories. And this one had all the elements: a power-hungry president, an essential business being shut down, vulnerable elderly people caught in the middle. It could backfire, I said. Make things worse with the HOA. Things are already as bad as they can get. You are facing a lien on our house. What is Patricia going to do? Fine you harder? She had a point. That afternoon, I reached out to a local news station. I sent an email to their consumer advocacy reporter explaining the situation. I did not expect much, but within 2 hours I got a call back. "Mr. Ashford, this is Rachel Kim from Channel 7 News. I would like to talk to you about your situation. Are you available for an interview?" We set up a meeting for the next day. Rachel came to my house with a cameraman. She was professional and thorough, asking detailed questions about the HOA's actions, the fines, and how it affected my clients. "You have clients who would be willing to talk to us?" she asked. "I think so. A lot of them are upset about this too." Rachel interviewed Mrs. Chen, who talked about how I had helped her during the blizzard, and how she did not know what she would have done without me. She interviewed Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Rodriguez, who said she regretted canceling my services after Patricia's phone call. The story aired 2 days later, on January 3rd. It was a 3-minute segment during the evening news, and it did not pull punches. Rachel presented the facts clearly: a legitimate business owner being fined by his HOA despite providing essential services during a major storm. She interviewed Marcus, who explained why the HOA's interpretation of the covenants was wrong. And she tried to interview Patricia, but Patricia declined and slammed her door in Rachel's face, which did not make her look good. The story ended with Rachel's sign-off. The question remains, should homeowners associations have the power to shut down businesses that help their communities? The Ashfords will face a judge next week, but in the meantime, Simon continues to rack up fines for the crime of helping his neighbors. The response was immediate. The station's website and social media exploded with comments supporting me and criticizing the HOA. Other news outlets picked up the story. By the next morning, it had gone regional, with stations in Boulder and Colorado Springs running their own versions. My phone rang constantly. Supporters, new clients, people offering to help pay my fines. It was overwhelming, but the most interesting call came on January 4th. It was from Linda Chen, one of the HOA board members Jerry had mentioned. "Mr. Ashford, I am calling to apologize. What Patricia has done is wrong, and several of us on the board are working to fix it. I appreciate that, but the fines are still accumulating. I know. We are calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow evening. David Morrison and I are going to move to rescind the fines and reverse the decision. We should have the votes." Should. Tom Bradley is loyal to Patricia, but there are 5 board members total. Jerry Patterson is also on the board, though he has been relatively quiet. If we can get him to vote with us, we will have 3 votes to Patricia and Tom's 2. What are my chances? Honestly, I think they are good. A lot of people in the neighborhood are angry about this. The news coverage has put pressure on the board. Patricia has overstepped and she knows it. The emergency meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. on January 5th at the community clubhouse. It was open to all residents. Marcus advised me to attend but to stay quiet unless directly asked to speak. "Let the board sort this out," he said. "If they rescind the fines, we avoid court entirely. If they do not, we still have our hearing in 2 days." Zara and I arrived at the clubhouse at 6:45. The parking lot was packed. I had never seen this many people at an HOA meeting. We walked inside to find the main room filled with at least 70 residents. Every chair was taken and people lined the walls. Patricia sat at the head table with the other board members, her expression tight and controlled. Tom Bradley sat to her right, looking nervous. Linda Chen and David Morrison sat to her left, looking determined. Jerry Patterson sat at the end, his expression neutral. The meeting started right at 7. Patricia called it to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. "This emergency meeting has been called to address concerns raised regarding enforcement actions taken against a resident. I want to remind everyone that this board has an obligation to uphold our community covenants and that all decisions have been made in accordance with our governing documents." Linda immediately raised her hand. "I would like to make a motion." Patricia's jaw tightened. We are still in the opening remarks. The agenda allows for motions during new business. I move that we immediately rescind all fines levied against Simon Ashford and reverse the decision to ban his snow removal business. A murmur went through the crowd. Several people clapped. "I second the motion," David said. Patricia looked like she had bitten into a lemon. "Very well. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion?" Tom raised his hand. I do not think we should cave to media pressure. We made a decision based on the covenants and we should stand by it. The decision was wrong, Linda said, her voice firm. The covenant section cited does not apply to Mr. Ashford's business. He operates off-site. His equipment is stored in his garage. There is no disturbance to the neighborhood. We are fining him for no legitimate reason, and frankly, I am embarrassed that this board let it get this far. Several residents applauded. Patricia raised her hand for silence. This is not a town hall. Board members will speak. Actually, it is a town hall, a man in the front row said. The bylaws say residents can speak during board meetings. Patricia ignored him. The covenant clearly states that commercial operations are not permitted. Mr. Ashford's business is a commercial operation. That is a dishonest interpretation, David said, and you know it. You targeted him specifically. I have lived in this neighborhood for 12 years. We have had residents who ran consulting businesses from home offices. We have had people who sold crafts online. We have had a resident who gave piano lessons. None of them were fined or told to stop. You singled out Mr. Ashford because you do not like his truck sitting in his driveway occasionally. That is not true, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Jerry finally spoke. I have been on this board for 8 years. I have seen a lot of enforcement actions. This is the first time I have felt uncomfortable with how we handled something. Mr. Ashford's business helped people during the blizzard. My own mother-in-law called him because her regular service could not get to her. He cleared her driveway on New Year's Eve in the middle of the storm. We are fining him for that. It does not sit right with me. The room erupted in applause. Patricia banged her gavel repeatedly. Order! We will have order. When the room finally quieted, she looked at Jerry with something like betrayal in her eyes. Are you saying you are going to vote against the board's decision? I am saying I am going to vote to rescind unjust fines against a neighbor who did nothing wrong. Patricia's face flushed red. This is a witch hunt. The media has poisoned everyone against me. I have spent 4 years trying to maintain standards in this neighborhood, and this is the thanks I get. Patricia, Linda said quietly, this is not about you. This is about doing the right thing. Fine. Let's vote then. Patricia's voice was clipped. All in favor of rescinding the fines against Mr. Ashford, Linda, David, and Jerry raised their hands. Opposed, Patricia and Tom raised their hands. The motion passes 3-2. The fines are rescinded. Patricia looked like she wanted to throw the gavel. Is there any other business? I have one more thing, Linda said. I move that we amend our enforcement procedures to require a full board vote before any fines exceeding $100 are levied against a resident. No more emergency meetings with partial attendance to push through major actions. Second, David said immediately. This motion also passed 3-2 with Patricia and Tom voting against it. The meeting ended shortly after. Residents came up to me, shaking my hand and congratulating me. Mrs. Chen hugged me. Jerry patted my shoulder. Glad it worked out, he said. Patricia left quickly, Tom trailing behind her. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered the stress she had put me and Zara through, the clients she had scared away, the thousands in legal fees I had incurred. Marcus called me the next morning. I saw the news. Congratulations. Thanks. I guess we do not need the court hearing anymore. Actually, I think you should still proceed, not to fight the fine since those are rescinded, but to seek damages. Patricia contacted your clients and lied about your business being illegal. That is textbook tortious interference. You lost income because of her actions. You incurred legal fees. You have damages. How much could I get? Hard to say. Depends on what you can prove, but I think you have a solid case. I talked it over with Zara that evening. Part of me wanted to just move on. The fines were gone. I could go back to work. But another part of me felt like Patricia needed to be held accountable. She had tried to destroy my business out of spite. If I did not push back, what would stop her from doing it to someone else? Sue her, Zara said. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. So we proceeded with the lawsuit. Marcus filed it in district court, seeking damages for lost income, legal fees, and emotional distress. The amount totaled around $15,000. Patricia responded with her own attorney, denying all allegations. She claimed she had been acting in her capacity as HOA president and was therefore protected from personal liability. That is not how it works, Marcus explained. She was not performing legitimate HOA duties. She was engaging in personal harassment and making false statements about your business. She can be held personally liable. The case moved slowly through the court system, discovery, depositions, motions. It was tedious and stressful, but Marcus handled most of it. In March, we had a major break. During Patricia's deposition, she admitted under oath that she had contacted my clients to inform them about covenant violations. When Marcus pressed her on what she had told them, she got flustered and contradicted herself several times. It was clear she had lied to them. The deposition transcript was damning. Marcus filed a motion for summary judgment, arguing that the facts were not in dispute and that Patricia was liable as a matter of law. In April, the judge granted the motion in part. He agreed that Patricia had interfered with my business but wanted a trial on the issue of damages. The trial was set for June. During all of this, life went on. Winter ended. Snow melted. I went back to construction work. My snow removal business was on hold until the next winter, but I had cleared my name, and my clients knew the truth. The trial lasted 3 days. Marcus presented evidence of my lost income, the clients I had lost due to Patricia's phone calls, the new clients I could not take on because of the stress and uncertainty. He presented my legal bills. He even had Mrs. Rodriguez testify about Patricia's phone call and how she had been told my business was illegal. Patricia's attorney tried to argue that any damages were minimal and that Patricia had been acting in good faith. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for just under 2 hours before returning a verdict in my favor. They awarded me $12,000 in compensatory damages and, in a surprise, an additional $5,000 in punitive damages because they found Patricia's conduct to be willful and malicious. $17,000. Patricia looked stunned when the verdict was read. Her attorney immediately filed notice that they would appeal, but Marcus said appeals were expensive and rarely successful. She will probably end up paying, he said. The verdict was well supported by the evidence. 2 weeks after the trial, I got another call from Linda Chen. I wanted to let you know that Patricia resigned from the HOA board yesterday. Really? Yes, I think the verdict shook her. She also received a lot of criticism from neighbors. People stopped talking to her. She became pretty isolated. I heard she and her husband are thinking about selling their house and moving. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction that justice had been served, but also a little sadness. Patricia had brought all of this on herself, but watching someone's life fall apart was not pleasant. Who is taking over as president? I asked. David Morrison. We are also revising the enforcement policies to make sure something like this does not happen again. More transparency, more accountability, required full board votes for major actions. You kind of forced us to become a better HOA. In August, Patricia's attorney contacted Marcus to discuss settlement of the judgment. They offered a payment plan, $5,000 immediately and the rest over 12 months. I agreed. I was not trying to bankrupt her. I just wanted accountability. The first check arrived in September. It cleared. I used it to pay off the last of my legal bills and put the rest into savings. That October, as I was preparing my equipment for the upcoming winter season, I got a call from a reporter at a national news outlet. Apparently, my story had caught the attention of a larger audience, and they were doing a piece on HOA overreach across America. "Would you be willing to be interviewed?" the reporter asked. "Sure." The story ran in November, just as the first snows were starting in the Rockies. It featured me and several other people from around the country who had been targeted by their HOAs for absurd reasons. A veteran in Florida fined for displaying an American flag. A family in Texas sued for painting their house the wrong shade of beige. A small business owner in Oregon shut down for running a home bakery. The common thread was power-hungry board members who cared more about control than community. The article sparked conversations about HOA reform, with some legislators proposing new laws to limit HOA authority and provide better protection for homeowners. I did not know if anything would come of it on a policy level, but it felt good to know our story might help others. That winter, my business had its best season yet. Word had spread about what happened, and I got calls from all over the Denver metro area. People wanted to support me. I ended up hiring 2 part-time workers to help handle the volume. We cleared hundreds of driveways and made a real difference during one of the coldest winters on record. Patricia and her husband did end up selling their house. They moved in February, and I never saw her again. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that they relocated to Arizona, probably looking for a fresh start somewhere without snow or HOAs or people who knew about the lawsuit. The new family who bought their house was young, friendly, and had 2 kids. They introduced themselves to everyone on the block and seemed genuinely excited to be part of the community. It was a nice change. By the time spring arrived again, the whole ordeal felt like a distant memory. Zara and I celebrated our 3rd anniversary with a trip to the mountains. We stayed in a cabin, hiked, and enjoyed being away from everything. On our last night there, as we sat on the deck watching the sunset, she turned to me. "You know what I am most proud of?" "What?" "That you did not give up. When Patricia was throwing everything at you, you kept fighting. A lot of people would have just folded." "I thought about it," I admitted. "There were days I wanted to just shut down the business and move on. But you did not. And you won. And now Patricia is gone and the HOA is better and you are doing great. That matters." She was right. It did matter. The following winter started early, with a significant storm in mid-November that dumped 14 inches across the Front Range. My phone rang off the hook. I spent 2 full days clearing driveways, including many of my original clients plus dozens of new ones. One afternoon, I was finishing up a job when an elderly man approached me. He lived in a different neighborhood, and I had just cleared his driveway. "You are the guy from the news, right? The one who fought the HOA?" "Yeah, that's me." "Good for you." Those HOAs think they can do whatever they want. Someone needs to stand up to them. I just wanted to run my business. "Well, you helped a lot of people, not just with snow removal, but by showing that you can fight back. My son is dealing with his HOA right now. They are trying to fine him for having a vegetable garden in his backyard." A vegetable garden in his own backyard. I told him about your story, gave him hope. We talked for a few more minutes and then I moved on to the next job, but his words stuck with me. I had not set out to be some kind of HOA warrior or activist. I had just wanted to clear snow and make a living. But sometimes standing up for yourself ends up meaning more than you expect. Over the next few years, the neighborhood continued to change. David Morrison proved to be a fair and reasonable HOA president. The board focused on actual community improvement projects rather than nitpicking violations. They repaved roads, updated the playground, and organized neighborhood events. It became a better place to live. My business grew steadily. I incorporated, got a business bank account, and even looked into expanding into landscaping during the warmer months. Zara got a promotion at the hospital, which took some financial pressure off us. We started talking about having kids. Life moved forward. But every winter when the first snow fell and I fired up my plow truck, I thought about that moment in my driveway when I first read Patricia's letter. How angry and helpless I had felt. How unfair it all seemed. And then I thought about everything that came after. The fight. The support from neighbors. The news coverage. The trial. The verdict. The changes to the HOA. I had learned something important through all of it. Systems that seem overwhelming and unfair can be challenged. People who abuse power can be held accountable. And sometimes, when you stand up for what is right, others will stand with you. It was December again, 4 years after the original conflict. I was sitting in my truck after a long day of plowing, warming my hands on a cup of coffee from a thermos. My phone buzzed with a text from Zara. Mrs. Chen called. Wants to make sure you are on her list for this winter. She said she would not trust anyone else. I smiled and texted back. Already on it, doing her place tomorrow. Another text came through, this one from Marcus. We had stayed in touch over the years, occasionally grabbing lunch or coffee. Saw the forecast. Big storm next week. Ready for it? Always ready, I replied. I finished my coffee, started the truck, and headed home. The streets were lined with Christmas lights. Families were inside their warm houses, probably having dinner or watching TV. The neighborhood looked peaceful. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Jerry Patterson outside, stringing lights on his roof. He waved and I waved back. Good neighbors. That is what it was supposed to be about. Inside, Zara had dinner ready. Pot roast with vegetables. It smelled amazing. How was your day? She asked as I kicked off my boots. Long but good, cleared about 20 driveways. Did you eat lunch? Grabbed a sandwich between jobs. We sat down to eat and she told me about her day at the hospital. A difficult case, a new nurse who was struggling, a doctor who was being unreasonable. I listened and asked questions. We had our routines now, our rhythms. This was life. After dinner, I checked the weather forecast one more time. The storm Marcus mentioned was tracking for the end of the week. 12 to 18 inches possible. I would need to start early and work long hours. But I was ready. I had good equipment, a solid client list, and the freedom to run my business without interference. That night, as I was falling asleep, I thought about what that elderly man had said years ago. About standing up and fighting back. About hope. I hoped he was right. I hoped my story had helped people. Not just with HOA disputes, but with the broader idea that you do not have to accept injustice. That you can push back against systems that are wrong. That persistence and principle can win. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows slightly. More snow was coming, and I would be ready for it, just like I always was, because this was my business, my livelihood, my community. And nobody was going to take that away from me again.